Hey guys, it's Andre from the High Performance Academy. We're here with Warren Overton from Pulse Performance. Now Warren is one of the world's most renowned Rotary engine builders and Rotary tuners. He's responsible for Mad Mike's RX-8 as well as his 4-rotor RX-7 and also the 6-rotor that we've got here behind us in the RX-4. We just wanted to grab Warren and talk to him a little bit about Rotary tuning. First of all, Warren, how did you get into tuning and how did you get into Rotaries? Give us a little bit about your background.
Sure, look, I started really early, like most people did with Rotaries, and got addicted and basically went from there. Started working full-time in a tuning shop with a dyno and got addicted to tuning and building engines. Yeah.
Rotaries are a pretty particular type of engine. Tuning them, building them, obviously they're completely different to petrol engines. Now, both of Mike's cars seem to be amazingly reliable, which is not something a Rotary engine's well known for. When you're tuning these engines, how are you doing this? What are you doing to keep these engines so reliable?
Sure, look, it really is a package thing. You can have the best engine in the world. If it's not tuned right, well, it'll fail. There's no doubt about it. There's a lot of aspects around keeping an engine reliable. Having fail-safe systems in place, like some of the higher-end ECUs, Heltec, Motec, so some of the higher-end stuff where you can actually put fail-safe systems in so that oil pressure drops, fuel pressure drops, whatever, then you're covered. That's certainly a big ticket thing. But I mean, you mentioned that they're quite a lot different to a piston engine. The fundamentals are still very, very similar in respects of air-fuel ratios and ignition timing. It all works very, very similar to a piston engine. It's like I say, it's a combination really.
With the ignition timing particularly, Rotaries are very intolerant of any detonation in just about any way, shape or form. What are you doing there to stay away from detonation? Do you just know the engine so well that you know what timing you want to use, or is it from just trial and error?
Yeah, look, certainly there is a lot of times where we'll know what a particular engine should want for timing, but that's not to say that we won't experiment either way as well. Again, the same as a piston engine, comes down to the fuel you're using, the compression ratios, how much boost, or is it naturally aspirated, all the things come into consideration. But we certainly still do experiment because every single engine is different. It doesn't matter, you can build two engines exactly the same, they still need to be tuned uniquely. That
makes sense. Now, when you're tuning a drift engine particularly, these engines are obviously spending a hell of a lot of time banging on the limiter, and for extended periods of time, that's got to be pretty hard on just about any engine. What sort of philosophy have you got when you're tuning a drift engine as opposed to something like a circuit car or maybe even a road car? What do you do differently?
It's quite a funny question that. With Mike, I try to lift the limiter up so he doesn't hit it. That doesn't seem to be working too well.
I think the higher you lift that limiter for Mike, the further he's going to rev it.
Yeah, look, I mean, I would much rather an engine rev than sit on a limiter. There's no doubt about it. It's a lot easier on an engine, especially a rotary engine. They don't mind revs. Like a 2-rotor engine, there's only 3 moving parts. Look, having a soft limiter before a hard limiter, I mean, that's a big must. Trimming the timing down as well when the limiter comes on. I mean, just simple stuff. There's no real secret there, really.
Sure. Okay, with the ECUs that you're actually using, what sort of products have you been using with these rotary engines, and do you have a favourite, or do you have one that you found works particularly well?
Yeah, okay, horses for courses, I guess you could say. It comes down to a lot to budget and what indeed it's being used for. If it's a standard road car, a middle of the road ECU is fine. I love the Heltec stuff. I love the Link stuff. Very similarly compared ECUs in my opinion. With what they've got available in the units, very similar price range as well. Love them both. The Mikrotik, I mean, that's always been there. The Mikrotik was designed around the rotary engine. That's predominantly what it was built for in the early days, and still is today. It has a lot of functions that, or I should say it doesn't have a lot of functions that some of the other ECUs do, but that's what it's designed for, a very simple ECU. Motec, of course, are brilliant for anything, so yeah, I wouldn't hesitate to use a Motec again on a Rotary.
The Mikrotik ECU is probably one of the ones that I think is most sort of synonymous with rotary engines, particularly over here in Australia where the ECU is manufactured. Now, personally, I've tuned a lot of Mikrotiks, and they really are a stripped-out ECU. They're quite particular, unusual to tune, I guess, if you're used to more of the common standalones like the Link, the Motec, or the Haltech. Particularly, one of the strange functions with the Mikrotik is the staging of the secondary injectors, and you've got that with just about all Rotaries, really. Pretty much you always end up with a bit of a step where the secondary stage in the Mikrotik, that's fair to say?
Yeah, absolutely. Look, and especially in matrix mode too. Like they actually the transition seems to be better in normal mode, which is ironic because the matrix is a far more definable way of tuning. Look, it's unfortunate. But I think they kind of go with the theory that, you know, you're wide open throttle and what happens at 3,000 RPM doesn't matter so much.
In my opinion, they've always seemed to work better or be more suited maybe for drag racing for that very reason. You are at wide open throttle, and maybe the drivability or precision at part throttle is not perhaps as easy for the tuner to get right.
Yeah, look, and certainly one of the things with the Mikrotik that, you know, I've found particularly annoying is for naturally aspirated applications where you only end up with about four tuning points when on throttle position for your load reference. But that I believe that they are changing that in the latest model that's coming out. So that'll be interesting to see how that comes along. But yeah, like you say, I mean it's a very simple ECU. It's designed to be able to be wired up by an average tuner, an average wirer, and run straight away, which they generally seem to be able to do without too much configuring.
Yep. Okay, I just want to talk a little bit about the RX4 we've got behind us with the 6-rotor. So as I understand it, this is a world first. You've certainly managed to get a lot of publicity from all around the world on this engine. Tell us, first of all, what brought this about as an idea? Why did you decide to do it?
Basically, the owner of the car came to us and he wanted something completely unique. We were toying up ideas with, you know, maybe quad turbos on a quad rotor. He came up with the idea of doing a 5-rotor. I thought about it a little and thought a 6-rotor would be a far better engine and possibly simpler engine to do, simply because of the physics of having opposing lobes on the crankshaft. So yeah, did a little research, came up with a plan and shot for it.
So it's a pretty big undertaking, particularly being out on your own with no real support from other people who have done it before. What were the engineering challenges that you faced getting the engine actually built?
Okay, well, look, I mean, Jeff from Precision Engineering obviously came on board pretty quickly. He'd already toyed with the idea. You know, between him and myself, we came up with a firing order. We got a good balancer to come on board. We spent a lot of time with the balancing of it. We had to make a number of counterweights, some dummy ones, so that we could actually get the orientation of the counterweights and everything. Yeah, it just sort of came together like that.
With such an unusual engine and being one of a kind, what were the challenges in getting an ECU to actually run it?
Yeah, look, that was a challenge. Being that we were wanting ideally 12 ignition outputs and 12 injector outputs. The injector outputs I was willing to compromise and group fire with, and consequently it meant that I actually had to do the same with the ignitions. So at the moment we've got leading and trailing firing at the same time. Mikrotik came on board very early in the piece. As soon as they got wind that we were doing it, they said that they would do an ECU specifically for us.
I just want to go back and talk about that leading and trailing. So the trailing split, which is pretty usual with a rotary, there's a lot of talk about how critical that really is to getting a reliable tune and making good power with these engines. So what do you see as the downsides of firing those both at the same time?
Okay, so yeah, there's quite a bit. You need to bear that in mind when you're choosing your plugs. Obviously, going with a colder and a hotter plug helps as well. It's not ideal, unfortunately. That's what we had to work with. So yeah, it's something we'd like to change in the future.
Does it compromise the power the engine's making?
Certainly, not a great deal. The split is a lot more critical actually at light throttle and light load stuff. Wide open throttle, not so critical. Yeah.
Okay. Just going back to Mike's car for a little bit, have you got any data analysis on the car? Are you doing any logging on the car when he comes back in from the pits and into the pits after he's been out on the track? And what are you looking for if you're looking at it as data?
Sure, yeah, okay, so we're using the race pack data logger in the dash and also the onboard logging in the Heltec ECU. At the moment I'm more interested in what's happening with the ECU stuff. It loads very fast. Yeah, look, we're looking for everything. I'm constantly trimming the tune up, finding tiny holes in the tune, adding extra tuning points in those areas, and just filling up that space. Also keeping an eye on things like, for example, here in Australia, the ambient temperature is extremely hot. We noticed the fuel temps getting up, and we were losing fuel pressure a little. And so, yeah, monitoring things like that constantly is, just normal stuff, really.
So we've got three cars that we've talked about. We've got Mike's RX-8, which runs the turbocharged 20B. We've got his 4-rotor RX-7, which is here competing today. And then we've got the 6-rotor, which is naturally aspirated. Can you tell us what power each of those engines makes?
Sure, okay. So the RX-4 here, that's running like 814 at the wheels. Dyno Dynamics rolling road dyno. The RX-7 with the quad rotor that's here today, that's running 535 horsepower at the wheels. And the RX-8 is 829, I think it is. Yeah.
That's some impressive numbers out of some engines that get a fairly hard beating. So it's a real credit to you that those are proving to be so reliable. Which one of those engines is your favourite to tune? Which has been the most satisfying to be involved with?
Okay, the RX-7, I've got a soft spot for that with the quad rotor because it's just been such a reliable engine, such a beautiful thing to tune. I never get sick of listening to it. You can listen to it all day long. It's always responsive on the dyno. You make a change, you see it straight away. And every time we put it on the dyno, the more and more beating it gets, it seems to make more power.
No, that's cool. You've certainly got some interesting projects that you're involved with, and we wish Mike all the best for the top 8 shootout this afternoon when he gets back out on track. And I guess we'll see you back in New Zealand. Thanks for coming along and spending some time talking to us, Warren.
No choice. Thank you very much, Simon.
For online tuning courses, visit learntotune.com.